Hello, everyone. This topic is on the view of self, philosophical, psychological, and cultural perspectives. So, we have an overview of the view of self, and wherein understanding the concept of self is a fundamental pursuit that has intrigued philosophers, psychologists, and individuals alike throughout history. So, our first category is the philosophical view of self. This exploration delves into the various dimensions of self, encompassing philosophical, psychological, and cultural viewpoints. So, what is the importance of understanding one's self concept and attitude? The way we perceive ourselves influences our thoughts, behaviors, and interactions with each other or with the world. Recognizing the intricacies of our self concept and attitude, it is an essential part for our personal growth, for building meaningful relationships, and for our overall well being. Let's go on the philosophical view of self. First is Socrates. Socrates, a foundational figure in Western philosophy, believed in self awareness as a path to wisdom. His method of introspection encouraged individuals to question and reflect upon their beliefs, leading to deeper self understanding. Wherein here, in compared to Plato, Plato has an allegory, the allegory of the cave. It illustrates his view of the self as an eternal soul, separate from the physical world. He emphasized the pursuit of knowledge and virtue as means to connect with the true essence of one's self. In the more modern days, we have Immanuel Kant. He emphasized rationality and autonomy in his view of self, and he believed that individuals possess intrinsic worth and should be treated as ends in themselves and not as just means to an end. Looking through Descartes, Rene Descartes he famously asserted the quote, "I think, therefore I am." He laid the foundation for modern philosophy by highlighting the mind's existence as indubitable, even if the external world might be deceiving. And we have here John Locke. John Locke's theory of the self focused on the idea of the tabula rasa, or what we call the blank slate. He believed that personal identity arises from experiences and memories rather than innate characteristics. And last, personality for the philosophical view of self is Hume or David Hume. He challenged the notion of a unified self, proposing that the self is a collection of constantly changing perceptions, and it is from him the idea of skepticism. His skepticism urged a re-evaluation of the concept of identity. Now let's go to the overview of psychological view of self. Here is a short introductions for the three people, Freud, Erikson, and Horney. A separate video with in-depth discussion about them will be sent. So first is Freud. Sigmund Freud introduced the concept of the unconscious mind and its influence on behavior. His psychoanalytic theory emphasized the interplay between conscious and unconscious desires in shaping one's self identity. On the other hand, Erik Erikson, psychosocial stages naman yang iyang line of study, wherein he says there are psychosocial stages of development that highlights the lifelong process of identity formation. He believed that individuals navigate various crises to achieve a coherent and stable sense of self. And lastly, Karen Horney, she focused on the impact of social and cultural factors on self development. She explored how neurotic behaviors emerge as a coping mechanism or coping mechanisms to deal with societal pressures. So you'll know about them from the separate video that discusses more in-depth discussion about it. Next is for the Christian and non-Christian view of self. We have here Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and some other additional religions, if you please. So for the main religions, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam only. For Judaism views the self as a creation of God with a purpose to fulfill divine commandments, self reflection, and ethical living. So, those self reflection and ethical living they contribute to aligning one's self concept with his spiritual values. In Buddhism challenges the permanence of self, emphasizing the concept of anatta or no self. The goal is to transcend the illusion of individual existence and attain enlightenment. In contrast with Hinduism envisions the self as eternal. So, traversing through cycles of birth and rebirth, that's why they have the concept of reincarnation. The ultimate goal is self realization or moksha to break the cycle and unite the universal consciousness. And for the last religion, the Islam emphasizes submission to Allah and cultivating a humble yet confident self. The self is seen as accountable for deeds with the potential for growth through faith and righteous actions. And as conclusion, before we start our activity, the explanation of nature of concepts of self and relation to personal experiences and beliefs. So, the nature of self is a complex interplay of your biological, psychological, and social cultural factors, everything that you've experienced since birth. It encompasses one's self concept, identity, and subjective experience. So, how you perceive an experience is different from how another person's perceive the same experience. So that's why it's called subjective experience. Individuals' personal experiences and beliefs shape their understanding of self, wherein culture, upbringing, how your parents raised you, and life events, they contribute to the unique lens through which one perceives oneself. So before we go with the my self concept journey activity, I will be sending a link for the separate video, which it is recommended for you to watch the video about the psychological view of self, discussing in depth more about Freud, Erikson, and Horney.